What's up, MegaCapitalG here, talking about Scapegoat in this video and why this has become my favorite card in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Currently. Not like all-time favorite ever, that would still be reserved for Luna Light Leo Dancer, but right now I don't think that there's another card that I get more excited and hyped to see in my opening hand, or maybe even as a top deck as Scapegoat. I mean, when I see this card, I just pretty much clench my fist and I think, yes, I can definitely do some big things and make the fireworks fly if I can resolve this card. And I love it because it pretty much gives any deck an instant amount of offense. Like it's that really quick jolt of I can go for a really big link summon play here, or I can at least, you know, mount some type of offense, even if the rest of my hand or the rest of my field is absolute booty. And it's really interesting, right? Because when you look at Scapegoats, and I try and put it in the context of back when we first learned about the link summon, right? Back in March, I talked about Scapegoats and I guess to a lesser extent, the Agent of Venus. And I talked about these as cards that could possibly make some, you know, meta plays, and maybe we might actually see them return to competitive relevance. But I'm gonna be honest, guys, I was pretty much like, I was only half in on that. I was trying to convince you guys just as much as I was trying to convince myself of it. I was thinking like, man, this really makes a lot of sense and it sounds really good on paper, but like, is anyone really gonna fucking play Scapegoat, Cap? Come on now. But I was like, well, it makes a lot of sense, so let's just go ahead and say it. I'm pretty sure that no one will remember this in, you know, 8-9 months anyways, by the time that we're actually knee deep in the Vrains era. And I'm actually kind of shocked that it has turned out that way, because you think of it in, or you think I thought of it back then and I was like, herder, this can be a 1-card firewall dragon, that's pretty OP. But then I was like, is anyone really gonna do that? And my reservations about Scapegoat were simply because I hadn't seen it. I mean, can you guys think of any time where Scapegoat was like a big and relevant meta card outside of like fucking Go format? And what was Go format, like 12 years ago? It's like 2005 or something like that. Most of the people who still play the game now, like they weren't even playing during Go format. Even I was playing back then, but I was taking a break from GOAT format, so I've never really seen a time where you would see Scapegoats as a regular player and maybe like a YCS top 8 deck or a Shonen Jump top 8 deck, and we have finally arrived to that point. It's really interesting because I feel like maybe over the last month or so, people have kind of spoken this into existence. Like you started seeing it in Trickstars, and I looked at it and I was like, Trickstars are playing Scapegoat. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Why? I started playing Trickstars with Scapegoat and I'm like, oh my god, if you resolve this card, it is utterly ridiculous. And I obviously know the detractors, they pretty much always have the same argument. In fact, it's the same argument that people had when I first brought this card up all the way back in March. People are saying, oh, well, won't it just get blown up in the end phase? Or why would you have to, you know, why would you run a card that you have to set for an entire turn before you can actually try and pop off? And to that I say, I mean, yes, it does have to be set, but if you're looking at it like that, at least it is a chainable card. Yes, it only gives you 4 GOAT tokens that don't really do anything during your opponent's turn, but at the very least, they can block 4 attacks technically. And really, if you compare it to trap cards like, I don't know, maybe a Solemn Strike or a Solemn Warning or something like that, there really isn't any difference between setting the Scapegoat and having that get hit with a Cosmic Cyclone in the end phase, or just, you know, setting like a Solemn card and having that get blown up. It's like the card was going to get blown up regardless, so it really doesn't make that big of a difference. The upside with Scapegoat is it can present you some offense, and it's really cool. I keep saying this, Scapegoat is one of the only cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. I would say it's probably the best at being a defensive card that can turn into an offensive card. I don't know if you guys remember that Cubic deck that actually made a regional top 8, but it was running multiple copies of Scapegoat, and I think that's one of the reasons. When you really look at Scapegoat, right, I look at the upside of this card and it's just ridiculous because the plays that it allows pretty much any decks to do. That's why you're starting to see people play it in Invoked. You're already seeing people play it in Trickstars. I don't want to say that it is the new Gofu, because clearly it is not nearly the instant gratification that Gofu was, where you summon Gofu and you can just, you know, it can be a 1-card link, it can instantly go into a Deco Talker or something like that. Scapegoat has a higher upside, but obviously you have to wait. But if you look at the plays, like all of these monsters can be summoned off a simple Scapegoat. Do you know how ridiculous it is to summon Borolo Dragon and Trickstar just off of fucking 1 card, and you're playing against a deck like Spiral and they have like no ways of actually killing it? It feels so amazing. thing. You know, you can make an Ingritsu, which can just be an out, non-targeting to just get rid of problem cards on your opponent's side of the field. Obviously, we know that Firewall is ridiculous. You flip over Scapegoat, and you don't even have to bring out your extra Link monsters. You can just use 4 tokens and go straight into Firewall. And I really like this play, the play where you go like double Link Spider, and then you have the Mistress Radiant as well. There's a lot of damage on that because I think the Mistress Radiant ends up being like 1900, and then both of the Link Spiders are 1500. So it actually is a ton of battle damage, and that's the same way that you can actually go on the Borlo Dragon if you need to just take one of your opponent's monsters, and you would give up those monsters. And when you look at this format, right, and you look at so many of these decks that struggle with offense and struggle to go into their own Link monsters, decks like Goki and decks like Rocket, some of these anime decks. And it really makes me wonder why more people aren't experimenting with Scapegoat in some of these lower tier decks, or in decks that just need offense, that don't rely on a lot of their extra deck space. If you look at Goki and Rockets, for example, these are just 2 decks that I'm going to use. I think Goki can definitely benefit from Scapegoat, because if you think, okay, I'm not going to be able to summon my Goki Link monsters, yeah, you will never take your Scapegoat tokens and convert those into your Goki Link boss monsters, but at the same time, you still can convert those into Mistress Radiant. And the last time that I checked, the entire Goki archetype is Earth based, so you're making a card that you were probably going to make at some point in the duel anyways, or at least a card that will insanely benefit your plays. And then when the Mistress Radiant dies, it's fine because you can just replace it with a Goki monster from the graveyard, so you're really not taking that much of a neg at all. If you look at it in Rockets, my god, has anyone ever summoned Borlo Dragon easily in this deck? Like, it's just so difficult unless you're using like the cards that come out of Extreme Force, you know, OCG cards or Soul Charge or something like that. Rocket struggles so much to produce their own boss monster, and you use up all your resources summoning that damn thing, and then your Rockets like don't even trigger, so you kind of just lose so much advantage. But what if you could just flip over a Scapegoat and summon Borlo for 1 card and keep all of those resources, and then systematically pick your opponent apart by triggering Borlo Dragon's effect over and over and over again, and you still have those 3 monsters in your hand, those monsters that you committed to Borlo Dragon, and maybe you still have your normal summon for the turn too. It would just make your life so much easier. And man, I kind of want to keep Scapegoats on the low because I feel like it's still kind of the underground tech, but I think the entire Yu-Gi-Oh community knows about it at this point. Scapegoat is just, it's such a magnificent card right now, and I kind of feel like when I'm building a deck, I kind of have to talk myself out of running Scapegoat as opposed to why I should run it. Like, outside of maybe Spiral, where Spiral don't really need to pop off, they can just naturally do that with their engine, or something like Pendulum Magicians where you have to commit so many cards to being pendulum scales and whatnot. I'm looking at almost every deck in the format and I'm like, so why shouldn't I run Scapegoat in this build? If you're running something like Mermill, or even Luna Lights as an example, you'd be like, you guys are going to be like, why are you bringing up Luna Lights? It's just an example. Decks where you want to kill your opponent within the first couple of turns, then yes, Scapegoat doesn't really work. If your win con has to be achieved by turn 3, Scapegoat is it's not really going to benefit you in that sense. But if you're playing something like Trickstar, something like Invoke, something like Goki, where you're trying to play a little bit of a grind game, maybe do some battle damage, take your opponent, and the only way that you're killing them by turn 2 is if they completely brick, or if you floodgated them out of the duel, like, Scapegoat is definitely worth looking at, especially for these decks that don't have a lot of extra monsters, or excuse me, that don't have a lot of like you know, Link monsters of their own, or decks that can afford to you know, run a bunch of Link monsters in their extra deck. Like, if I was just playing, I don't know, out of another example, Cosmos, like, I would definitely consider running two copies of Scapegoat in my side deck, because, or excuse me, in my main deck, because, like, what's the real downside of the card? I mean, worst case scenario, yeah, it might be a -1 if your opponent forces it out and they kill all your tokens, but the upside is, like, I get to make Borlo Dragon and steal a game from ABC that I probably shouldn't have won because they have like literally no outs to the card, you know what I mean? So I look at the upside of Scapegoats and I think that it far exceeds the downside, and I think that this is a card that people need to take note of. It's still going to be kind of slow for a lot of people in the format, and if you're running something like True Draco with, Domain of the Monarchs. Obviously, running Scapegoat doesn't really help you, but it is such an amazing card right now. I hope Konami never actually limits this card, because it does so much work right now. Anyways, whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and I guess thumbs up the video. I don't know if I asked that already. This video has been brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audible.com/MegaCapitalG. Over 180,000 audiobooks to download. And if you get rid of your free trial, you still keep the book. I'm listening to Super Sales on Superheroes by William D. Aaron. Link in the description.